A man dies from what seem to be natural causes.
Hey, wake up! My husband's really sick. He got heat stroke yesterday, and now he's not waking up.
His condition continued to decline throughout the evening hours. He ultimately passed away.
At the time, it was felt that this was more a medical-related death.
But an autopsy reveals foul play.
When we got the tox screen back, the victim had a lethal dose of ethylene glycol in his system.
So ethylene glycol is mainly found in antifreeze and brake fluid.
In the garage, there was a beer bottle that was full of antifreeze.
I knew my dad didn't just pass away so easily like that.
But when investigators discover a family inheritance at stake, it leads them to a killer who'd do anything to keep it for themselves.
I was leaned over in the truck, and she come out with a big old knife and tried to stab me.
$17 million is a lot of money. I don't care who you are.
This all could have been prevented. He died over literally nothing.
On September 4th, 2023, police in Minot, North Dakota receive what appears to be a routine emergency call.
Our Minot Central Dispatch received a phone call from Ina-Kenoyer reporting that Stephen Riley was ill in their apartment.
My husband's really sick. He got heat stroke yesterday, and now he's not waking up. Hey, wake up! Come on, wake up!
She stated that he was lying on the floor and that he was breathing but abnormally, and she needed an ambulance.
I've got help on the way.
Officers and medical staff were all dispatched to their apartment to try to make contact and see what was going on.
61-year-old man was unconscious.
Is he in here?
Yeah, he's on the floor in here.
Is he alert?
Huh?
Is he alert?
No.
Is he breathing?
The apartment was very cluttered.
There was trash, piles of clothing. We had to just really step over and onto a bunch of things to kind of navigate through the apartment.
They eventually come to the bedroom where they see Stephen Riley barely breathing.
Steve, can you hear me? Steve? Steve, can you hear me? Has he taken anything?
No. He drank beer yesterday. He was working on the truck.
Ina had mentioned to officers that she was trying to help Stephen by putting an ice compress on him to try to help cool him down from the heat stroke.
She said she tried to put him up on the bed and he fell off. Then that's when she decided to call for EMS.
By the time paramedics arrive, it's clear Stephen's condition is more serious than Ina thought.
He found him struggling to breathe, lying on the floor unresponsive.
His condition is very poor. They had to carry him out in a cot.
Riley?
Once he arrived to the hospital, they quickly realized that he needed a bed in the ICU. There were no beds available here, so he was flown down to Bismarck, North Dakota.
When they get there, Stephen is actually getting worse and goes into cardiac arrest several times. Doctors working on him constantly to bring him back to life.
He was in end organ failure. His body has just started shutting down.
Well, Stephen's condition continued to decline throughout the evening hours and the night hours into the morning hours of the September 5th. Stephen ultimately passed away on September 5th at 8:32 in the morning.
My phone was blown up with messages and missed calls from some of my dad's friends. The doctors pronounced him dead over the phone to me. It was devastating. Felt like something was torn from you. So I just tried to stay as calm as I could and get the fastest flight over there.
Doctors are unable to give police a definitive cause of death, but they do find traces of drugs in Stephen's system.
He also tested positive for methamphetamines and had a known history of methamphetamine use prior to that. And at the time, it was felt that he likely suffered from a cardiac event complicated by the fact that he used methamphetamines.
There was nothing indicating that there was any kind of foul play or there was anything requiring law enforcement to get involved and begin an investigation.
But I knew my dad didn't just pass away so easily like that and so fast. I knew something was wrong and off from the start, and so I had requested an autopsy from the hospital. Shortly after that phone call with them, I had called the police station and tried to open a case for my dad. I just needed to figure out what was going on.
Stephen Riley was born August 25th, 1972 in Palm Springs, California. He was so premature, his parents weren't sure he would make it.
My brother was sort of a miracle baby. He was 4 pounds when he was born and made it into the newspaper for being so tiny.
Stephen not only survived, he thrived, eventually becoming the protective older brother of 2 sisters.
Having Stephen as an older brother, he was definitely in charge. He really looked after my sister and I, no matter what we did. He always made sure that we were safe. He was just that older brother that was very comforting in that way.
As Stephen grew older, he took pleasure in the simple joys of desert life.
He was really into mechanics a lot. We replaced his transmission like 3 times in his Camaro. He was always smiling, always. Steve was one of the jokesters and funny guy to be around, and, just good old friend. He'd take the shirt off his back for you.
But by the time he turned 40, he'd already been married and divorced twice.
Steve was married to his first wife, Cheryl, and they have 2 sons together. And then he remarried to his second wife, Melissa, and they have 3 sons together. He was a really good daddy to them, but he wasn't the type of person that had, like visible depression issues or high anxiety or anything like that. I think he hid a lot of that, to be honest. I think that's where some substance abuse kicked in. Then I think he just got with a crowd of people that were doing that stuff, and, once you get in, it's hard to get out.
My dad, he had a problem with alcohol and also had a drug habit. My mom cut off all connection between us. I think she was just worried that she didn't want us to go into the wrong footsteps.
He went to jail and did some time. And then when he got out, he didn't have anywhere to go, ended up in a homeless shelter.
While living in the shelter, Stephen met the woman who would help him turn things around. Her name was Ina-Kenoyer.
Ina-Kenoyer was born May 27th, 1976. She grew up in Bellingham, Washington.
Ina was social and active in high school, but as with many teenagers growing up, Ina suffered some setbacks, which unfortunately caused her to kind of struggle through life.
Ina would tell me that she had a very tough childhood.
After high school, Ina struggled to find herself, going through various jobs.
Eventually, those setbacks led her to the homeless shelter, which is where she ended up meeting Stephen Riley.
They really bonded together because they both knew what it was like to have absolutely nothing.
Stephen and Ina fell in love, and in 2011, they decided to move to North Dakota.
Stephen had a friend here in North Dakota that let him stay till he got on his feet. Steve and Ina, they were always together, always. Most of the time he would work on cars in the garage, and she'd be coming out bringing him coffee or something to eat.
Stephen and Ina looked from the outside like they were just any old happy couple living in Minot, North Dakota, living their daily lives.
Now, Stephen lies dead in a Bismarck hospital, and police think his complicated past might have caught up with him.
Stephen was a known user, and he probably wasn't taking the best care of himself. A lot of times, like in the summer heat, you're not drinking fluids, your body gets really hot and your organs start shutting down. And I think that's kind of what people thought happened.
At the time of the officer's arrival, you could see beer bottles throughout the living room. Other than that, there was no obvious signs that Stephen wasn't just intoxicated or that he had been drinking that day until we got another phone call from Ina-Kenoyer.
On September 5th, which was the day after our law enforcement had responded for the medical call, Ina had called 911 to report that Stephen's friend, Billy Burkhead, had shown up trying to steal Stephen's truck.
Where's the truck at? In the garage.
All right, let me just take a look at it. So what's going on with the truck?
Said you're gonna sell everything. I said, no, you ain't. You ain't selling nothing.
Ina said Billy had broken into the garage, and she had voiced her concerns that she believes he killed Stephen. From an investigator standpoint, there was a whole lot more that needed to be looked at here, and that's when we officially stepped in to try to figure this all out.
Coming up, detectives question Billy's motives.
There was something of interest as far as a murder weapon. Is Billy trying to get in there to get rid of that?
But he points the finger at someone else.
When you say she's not likable.
If she don't get her way, she's bad.
Detectives in Minot, North Dakota, agreed to open an investigation into the death of Stephen Riley after his girlfriend, Ina-Kenoyer, alleged he may have been murdered. To their surprise, detectives learned the county coroner is already looking into the case.
At this point, we were notified that an autopsy had been ordered by Stephen's son, Ryan.
I was actually contacted by one of the ICU physicians that took care of him, and she recommended that we test for ethylene glycol poisoning as well. It was just a hunch that she had based off a lot of his symptoms that he presented with. Ethylene glycol is a very common substance, mainly found in antifreeze and brake fluid. And it's a slow death over a 2 to 3 day period where they're basically just suffering from the toxic effects.
When we got the tox screen back from the medical examiner, the victim had a very lethal dose of ethylene glycol in his system. The typical lethal level of ethylene glycol is approximately 20 milligrams per deciliter. The level of ethylene glycol in Stephen's system was 33 milligrams per deciliter.
And that's when I knew that we had a homicide on our hands.
Ina has already given them the name of the person she suspects, Billy Burkhead.
After receiving the information from Ina that Billy had broken into the garage, well, maybe there was something of interest as far as a murder weapon, a vessel of some sort that maybe administered some sort of poison to him. And is Billy trying to get in there to get rid of that?
A search of the garage provides a valuable clue.
During the search, we found 2 jugs of antifreeze. One jug was completely empty. The other jug was approximately half full. They were both gallon jugs.
But also in the garage, there was a beer bottle that was full of a substance that we identified as potentially being antifreeze.
Inside the house, investigators find another possibility.
On an end table next to the couch, there was a Windex bottle. Typical item that you would have in your home, but not typically filled with a neon green substance that resembles antifreeze.
We found that Windex bottle, and that was huge for us. It was just in an unusual manner. It was open, there was no cap on it, and that bottle could have easily been knocked over and spilled.
Finding those items throughout the property, I was very confident that at least one of those items was going to potentially be how or where that ethylene glycol came from.
Police ask Billy Burkhead to come in for questioning.
Thanks for coming down. Appreciate it.
No problem.
We wanted to understand the relationship between Billy and Stephen. Billy was cooperative with us during our interview.
So how do you know Steve?
Steve, I've known him about 10 years now.
Okay.
We worked on vehicles together and just about every day, you know.
Detectives find the garage incident suspicious, but Billy insists he had nothing to do with Stephen's death.
Billy had told us that the reason he had went into the garage was because he was concerned that Ina was going to sell the truck. And Billy knew that Stephen was trying to fix it up as a gift for his son, Ryan.
According to Billy, the person they should be interrogating is Ina.
She's not a likable person.
When you say she's not likable, what about her is not likable?
I went over one day at their house and I was leaned over in the truck gathering my tools up and she come out with a big old knife and tried to stab me. Her friend Lynn was with me.
Okay.
And she took the knife away from her and had her in a headlock.
How long ago was that?
2 years ago.
And for no reason? Was she just mad about anything?
Just mad. She gets mad, Steve. If she don't get her way, she's bad. I mean, really bad.
He mentioned a friend of his named Lynn had told him that Ina had talked about poisoning Billy and Stephen with antifreeze.
Lynn had said that her and Ina were joking about the boys being the boys. Something about them being frustrating or something like that.
And Ina said, hey, you know, we could just put antifreeze in Billy and Steve's Gatorades and they would never know the difference.
With Ina and Billy both accusing each other, investigators find themselves wondering who to trust.
Anytime somebody wants to come to law enforcement and point the finger, of course, we have to kind of keep them in the back of our mind as well. Are they just trying to distract a situation to kind of take the heat off of them?
However, that statement about antifreeze in his Gatorade was pretty crucial to the investigation, because now we know it's a manner of administering the poison that ultimately killed Stephen. At this point during the interview, it was definitely starting to look like Ina might have had something to do with this.
As the investigation into Stephen Riley's murder gets underway, his son Ryan travels to North Dakota to handle preparations for his funeral. The two had recently reconnected after years of estrangement.
This is my first year after finishing boot camp for Army. Me and my father had made some arrangements to meet up and see each other after all those years, but I ended up going on a rotation out to Europe. My father was very interested into seeing how me and my brothers were off in life. He missed all of us deeply. We were all very devastated and hurt. It's like losing half of you. When I flew up there and the case finally got opened, I felt motivated to just hopefully bring whoever did it to justice.
When Ryan arrives, he finds Stephen and Ina's neighbor, Rebecca Mello, there to greet him.
She kind of looked around to make sure Ina wasn't eavesdropping, and she said that she thought it was a little suspicious that Ina, she never went to the ICU to visit him or anything.
I said to Ryan, I'm so sorry about your dad, but I can't hold it in. I have to tell someone. I personally began thinking that Ina had done something to Stephen. The week leading up to it, Stephen was not talking right, acting right, walking right. He was getting sicker and sicker. And Ina was like, he'll be fine, he'll be fine.
When Ryan meets with detectives to discuss the case on September 8th, he shares those suspicions. And according to Ryan, Ina had plenty of reason to kill his father.
He was talking about how he was getting a large sum of money. I guess it was just like family inheritance.
Okay.
And he said whenever that came through, he was gonna take that truck that he had in the garage that he was working on for me.
Yeah.
Drive that down to Texas, because he had set up like a trust fund for me and my brothers.
Stephen had told him that he was going to be inheriting a great sum of money from an uncle who lived in Ireland.
He was supposed to inherit $17 million from overseas somewhere.
I was pretty skeptical about it because it's just out of the blue. And it's from some family member that I've never heard of or seen. I was a little surprised and shocked that my father was going to be getting a huge amount, but he put all of his trust into that.
I don't know if in his mind things might have got a little bit twisted.
Steve, he did talk to me about that money. I told him not to get his hopes up. I kept feeding to him that, yo, bro, do you even know who this is? He always changed the subject.
That got everybody's suspicions raised. $17 million is a lot of money, and a very good motive to do something like this.
Ryan says his father's friend and former landlord, Wesley Torgerson, told him they went to meet with an attorney to sign the paperwork. On September 9th, investigators ask Wesley and his son Shannon to come in for an interview.
You guys can have a seat here. Thanks for coming.
Yep.
Wesley confirms that 2 days before Stephen died, he drove Stephen and Ina to the airport to meet with a British attorney. While they waited for the man to arrive, Stephen began to look ill.
And ultimately, the lawyer did not show up. during that time is when Stephen's condition really deteriorated.
When Dustin and I came down on the concrete, there was a abutment, and we got him, so he kind of went down and sat there, and then he fell over backwards.
The Torgersons say they tried to take Stephen to get help, but Ina insisted it wasn't necessary.
Ina was, nope, he just needs to go home. Just take him home.
Ina was very adamant that it was just heat stroke and that Ina would care for him back at the apartment.
Wesley says that when he went back to check on Stephen the day before he died, Ina was acting strangely.
He thought it was maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. He started to drive up the driveway, and he said Ina was standing outside with the door open.
She saw my car and recognized me, and excuse my language, but she said, "Oh," and in the house she went and shut the door.
Wes asked her, well, where is he? Ina said that he went to the walk-in clinic.
So Wesley takes it upon himself to go to all the clinics. We have a small city, but all those trips take a lot of time, and there's no sign of him ever getting any medical help at that point. He went back to the residence to confront Ina about that, and she pretty much shuts him out, shuts the door, and doesn't want to talk to him about it.
Looking back, Wesley is now convinced Stephen was inside the house dying, and Ina knew it.
She wouldn't even let me in the door. She slammed it shut.
She made sure that the victim was not going to get emergency medical help until it was too late.
Coming up, detectives take a closer look at Ina's motive.
Stephen would tell me, between you and I, when I get this money, I'm finally leaving Ina.
And quickly realize they have all been deceived.
As soon as Ina mentioned that Stephen had died, the emails began to get rejected.
It was just fake.
Less than 4 days into the investigation, Ina-Kenoyer has emerged as the primary suspect in her boyfriend's murder. To learn more about their relationship, detectives interview the upstairs neighbor, Rebecca Mello.
They were truly best friends in the beginning. Ina was very quiet. She was hard to read at times because she didn't show as much emotion as Stephen. When she would tell me these stories of her childhood, I would try to comfort her and tell her that's something you should get help for as an adult. Navigate through that trauma.
According to Rebecca, Ina never sought help to overcome her psychological problems, and it eventually took a toll on Stephen.
She always told me they were husband and wife, where Steve would tell me, she's a crazy bitch, we're not married. He's like, but I met her at a homeless shelter, and if I leave her, she'll have absolutely no one.
Rebecca says Stephen had been looking for the right way to end things with Ina, and his inheritance finally made that possible.
Stephen would tell me, between you and I, when I get this money, I'm finally leaving Ina. He could leave Ina and not feel guilty because he would set her up with an apartment or something.
But it seemed that in the days leading up to Stephen's death, Ina became aware of his true intentions.
I feel Ina overheard things that Stephen had said in that garage, and it got the best of her. She was very resentful of the thought of him having that money and leaving her, and her having nothing. And she thought those things she overheard were going to take place, so she would get that money before anyone else.
Rebecca tells police that her suspicions began shortly after Stephen was taken to the hospital.
I said, Ina, is everything okay? She was like, yeah, he got sick. He was poisoned. Insisting Steve got poisoned by antifreeze.
She said this to you on Sunday.
After the ambulance left.
To investigators, the timing immediately throws up red flags.
Stephen wasn't dead yet, and nobody had talked about antifreeze or poisoning at that point. We didn't know for 2 days, so how would Ina know within hours of him being brought to the hospital, unless she is the one that did it? During that conversation, Rebecca asked her who would have done it.
She told me Billy and his friends were poisoning him all week because he was getting sicker and sicker. She said they were bringing him food and milk. I would ask, but why? She couldn't answer. She would jump to a different subject.
People often try to deflect the questions that they're being asked when they feel that they're now in the line of sight. It's kind of that fight or flight moment. But you can't just take it at face value. Every word that people say could be the next clue.
Detectives are certain they're on the right track, but they need more to link Ina to the crime.
All of the evidence that we have at this point is circumstantial.
So we made a decision to go try talk to Ina.
We talked to her last. I wanted to wait until the end, after we talked to everyone else, because I wanted to see what she had to say.
Coming up, detectives face off with their prime suspect.
He wasn't at the walk-in clinic.
He was at the hospital.
He wasn't at the hospital. He wasn't anywhere yet.
And she reaches a breaking point.
As soon as we confronted Ina, she went ballistic.
Detectives now consider Ina-Kenoyer to be the prime suspect in her boyfriend's poisoning death. Having just learned their victim was expected to receive a multi-million-dollar inheritance, police press Ina for a confession.
She seemed to be the one that was closest to him, that knew the most about the money, and that ultimately would benefit from whatever money he was going to get if he wasn't around, at least in her mind.
When they confront her about Stephen's multi-million-dollar inheritance, Ina claims she knew about it, but it didn't interest her at all.
Was he gonna make sure you got money?
No.
Okay.
Because I kept telling him I don't want it. I was like, is it cursed? And people that go after it are dying?
She offered up that all of the people that have been heir to this inheritance all mysteriously just passed away.
She also denies the Torgersons' accusation that she prevented Stephen from getting medical attention.
Steve started getting really, really sick. And I kept begging him to let me call the ambulance. And he's like, no, I'll be fine with some sleep.
There's reports that Wes came to the house that morning, and you said that Steve was at the walk-in clinic. He wasn't at the walk-in clinic.
Steve didn't want to see Wes anymore.
Okay, but Steve wasn't at the walk-in clinic.
He was at the hospital.
He wasn't at the hospital. He wasn't anywhere yet.
Ina's now saying that she had begged him to go to the hospital. Ina had also said that he went to the walk-in clinic, but Stephen had never been checked in to any of these facilities. As soon as we confronted Ina with the contradictions that she had made, she went ballistic.
I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. I wish I was there. I wish I was with him every second of the day that day. I wish I watched every single... But I'm not
his mom.
There was just kind of an explosion of anger. And I think that was really the moment when the suspect realized that they had been caught. And then she just ultimately said she wanted a lawyer, and that was it.
You guys are so unbelievable.
As certain as investigators are that Ina poisoned Stephen, they didn't get the confession they were hoping for. So they're forced to let Ina go while they continue to build their case against her.
When we arrest people, we want to have all the information that we can. So we need to get all that together and present it to our state's attorney's office so they have the whole picture in front of them.
Almost 2 months after Stephen's death, we were finally able to obtain a signed arrest warrant for Ina for murder. On October 30th of 2023, I then went up to her residence. Ina came out, and she was placed under arrest.
I was been out there the whole freaking day.
You are innocent until proven guilty, okay? But there is a warrant signed for your arrest. Okay?
I've never done anything. I haven't done anything. Not ever.
While the case against Ina remains largely circumstantial, one of the most important pieces of evidence is the inheritance letter that gave Ina her motive. But when investigators obtain a copy of the paperwork, they make a shocking discovery.
So the letter was just a generic letter. It was on this regular printed letterhead, but it had come through email. It wasn't signed by anyone in particular. It just said, "Thank you, Arab Bank of Switzerland." Stephen Riley was in a different font than the rest of the letter, and some of the capitalization in the letters was off. There was some correspondence with a person who called himself Richard, and in those emails was conversations about Stephen needing to send his personal information to this particular person so they could verify who he was. As soon as Ina mentioned that Stephen had died, the emails began to get rejected. The email was no longer a valid email.
It was all a scam.
It was just fake. None of it was real.
This person was only trying to get information and/or money from Stephen. For what purpose, we don't know. A gentleman from the Department of Treasury assisted us in trying to see if it was related to any other scams that they were aware of. It really kind of just landed us at a dead end, so there's nothing to follow up on.
And everybody that hears that story is like, oh, that's a scam, that's a scam. But to Steve and Ina, it was 100% true.
I was very hopeful that we had brought enough to the table so that we could get a conviction, but I was very nervous. We wanted to make sure that we don't overlook something that we may have missed that could be detrimental to this case. Ultimately, we want to make sure that justice is served.
After a 2-month-long investigation, Ina-Kenoyer is set to stand trial for the murder of her boyfriend, Stephen Riley. Prosecutors are prepared to argue that she did it to keep his $17 million inheritance for herself. An inheritance they now know was nothing but a lie.
I believe she was aware that if she secretly administered some antifreeze in his sweet tea, that he would be gone and she would be the one who would collect the money ultimately at the end.
When she found out that her love of her life possibly planned on leaving her, I think she snapped.
Ina thought she was going to inherit that money from Stephen being his common law wife, and absolutely there was not one dime to be given to her or to Stephen.
This all could have been prevented. It didn't have to happen. And Stephen unfortunately died over literally nothing.
Despite a lack of direct evidence, the prosecution feels their case will be persuasive to the jury. But before the court date arrives, Ina and her lawyer make a surprising announcement.
In May of 2024, Ina and her attorney filed a motion for a change of plea. Ina was going to plead guilty to the charge of homicide, a double-A felony here in the state of North Dakota.
5 months later, Ina is sentenced at the Ward County Courthouse.
A lot of the times when you look at the person who's on trial for a murder, you can see something. They're looking down, they're feeling some type of way, but with Ina, it's a straightforward stare. There's nothing behind those eyes.
The judge gave Ina a 25-year sentence with 10 years of probation.
We weren't happy to hear that it was 25 with probation.
25 years is not enough. Lucky for her, the Department of Corrections doesn't serve antifreeze in their ICU.
It's just hard for me to even comprehend that anybody would take a life over money, and then to even find out that there was really nothing that anyone was going to gain from that at all anyway. It's disturbing, really.
Stephen was just the best friend to ever have. He'd do anything for anybody. And it's just so bad that Ina had to do this to him.
I believe my dad's legacy was wanting to be a type of man to always be there to make everyone happy and just kind of live in the moment. I think I'm done grieving, finally. I'm able to accept new beginnings and carry on with my dad's legacy.
In the heart of the American Southwest lies the Prescott National Forest, a vast expanse of untamed nature where residents seek solace, recreation, and a return to equilibrium for a culture that deeply values the harmonious balance between humanity and the natural world. A sanctuary like this should be a place of quiet reflection and shared joy. Yet, beneath the canopy of ancient trees, a profound darkness took root. This is a harrowing chronicle of a community shattered by violence, a testament to the enduring anguish of two families, and a profound journalistic exploration of the fragile human psyche. On the evening of September 29, 1988, the tranquility of the forest was forever broken. A local citizen, concluding his day of target shooting in the fading light, stumbled upon the remnants of a rural fire pit. What he initially mistook for a discarded branch protruding from the ashes was, in fact, a human arm. The local authorities from the Yavapai County Sheriff Department were summoned immediately via a 911 emergency call. They arrived to a scene of incomprehensible brutality. A young woman had been discarded like refuse. Her physical form burned beyond recognition. The indignity of her final resting place stood in stark contrast to the inherent dignity every human being deserves. Through careful dental record comparisons, the victim was identified as 19-year-old Pamela Pitts. Pamela, known affectionately as Pam, had been missing for 13 agonizing days. To understand the profound tragedy of her loss, one must understand the light she carried. Pam possessed a rare vitality, an authentic joy for living that resonates deeply with the spirit of embracing life fully. She was the eldest of 4 siblings, a guiding force in her family, described by her father, Paul, as a wonderful youth who radiated warmth. She dreamed of attending beauty college, driven by an artistic soul that sought to bring more beauty into the world. Seeking independence, Pam had moved into an apartment with an 18-year-old acquaintance, Shelley Norgard. The contrast between the inner worlds of the two young women was stark. While Pam was anchored by the unwavering love of her family, Shelley drifted in a sea of emotional turbulence. Her past was marked by profound abandonment. The departure of her mother and the harsh strictures of her father left Shelley with a consuming void. Instead of seeking the healthy, measured balance of human connection, Shelley developed a fierce, suffocating attachment to those around her. When she felt the warmth of a relationship slipping away, her fear of abandonment morphed into an uncontrollable, destructive rage. Pam, realizing the living arrangement was deteriorating due to unpaid rent and severe emotional strain, confided in her father that she wished to return to the sanctuary of her family home. She had not yet informed Shelley of her departure. On September 16, 1988, Pam vanished without a trace. The investigation that followed was a labyrinth of false leads, whispers, and community hysteria. Rumors of ritualistic cults swept through the town of Prescott. A young woman named Melinda Perry was falsely accused of beating Pam in a fight and even faced charges of perjury before the absolute truth of her innocence prevailed. Through it all, Shelley maintained an alibi, though cracks in her facade were visible to those who looked closely. She spoke chillingly to friends about how one might dispose of a human being by burning them or dropping them down a mine shaft. Yet, without the modern miracle of deoxyribonucleic acid testing, which was then in its infancy, or concrete physical evidence linking her to the desolate fire pit, the authorities could not pierce the veil of her deception. The case grew agonizingly cold. 3 years elapsed. The community tried to heal, leaning heavily on their shared solidarity and resilience. But the darkness within Shelley Norgard had not been extinguished. By 1991, she was deeply involved with a 24-year-old man named Ray Clerks. Ray was a young man of great promise, an aspiring commercial pilot whose gaze was fixed on the vast, open skies. He belonged to a tight-knit family that grounded him in steadfast love. When Ray decided to end the relationship and relocate to California without Shelley, history repeated itself with terrifying precision. On May 25, 1991, explorers deep within a mountain cave made a grisly discovery in a vertical mine shaft. The severely decomposed body of a young male was found, wrapped tightly in a waterbed liner. He had been shot in the head. It was the missing aviator, Ray Clerks. This time, the evidence was undeniable and absolute. A single fingerprint on a flashlight left near the improvised tomb, coupled with a tragic scent of death and matching blood within the trunk of Shelley's vehicle, sealed her fate. Arrested in June of 1991, Shelley eventually confessed to the court in 1993. She admitted to executing Ray in a fit of jealous rage as they looked at the stars, simply because he intended to leave her and take their dog with him. She was sentenced to 20 years in the state penitentiary for second-degree murder. For the family of Pamela Pitts, this revelation was a bitter confirmation of their darkest fears. They endured decades of profound silence. Their resilience a quiet monument to a father's enduring love for his daughter. They waited for the heavy wheels of justice to turn, fueled by a collective hope that the truth of the forest would eventually rise to the surface. That moment arrived in the spring of 2017. A dedicated cold case team had reopened the investigation in 2011, just as Shelley was nearing the end of her 20-year sentence. Investigators had interviewed her in prison and meticulously recorded 97 of her telephone communications. It took years for a dedicated detective to review those calls, but his patience yielded a monumental breakthrough. In a conversation with her father, Shelley was confronted about her secrets regarding Pam. Her sudden, panicked silence on the telephone line spoke volumes, providing the circumstantial weight needed by the state. On June 2nd, 2017, Shelley Norgar Harmon was arrested for the murder of Pamela Pitts. The ensuing legal battle was fraught with the severe challenges of a 30-year-old case. Crucial witnesses had passed away, and memories had faded into the desert wind. Facing an uncertain trial, prosecutors secured a plea agreement to ensure some measure of accountability. On March 1st, 2021, Shelley stood before a judge and finally unburdened a portion of her dark truth. She recounted tracking Pam down at a local gathering in the wilderness. A heated argument erupted, born entirely from Shelley's pathological inability to accept rejection and her total lack of emotional moderation. She admitted to striking Pam, knocking her to the earth, and continuing a brutal, relentless assault until the young woman ceased breathing. She claimed she then fled in a panic, deliberately refusing to admit to the horrific burning of the remains. For this confession, at 50 years of age, she was sentenced to time served and walked free into the world. It is a legal resolution that leaves a heavy weight upon the collective heart of the community. True justice often feels elusive, an imperfect human construct that cannot replace the vibrant lives that were stolen. Yet, in the face of such profound tragedy, we must look to the enduring light that remains. We choose to remember Pamela Pitts and Ray Clerks not for the violent manner of their passing, but for the beautiful, dynamic lives they led. This narrative serves as a stark, educational warning of the destructive power of unchecked emotional turmoil and the catastrophic consequences of losing one's inner equilibrium. However, it also stands as a permanent testament to the indestructible bonds of family and community. The families of Pam and Ray endured unimaginable sorrow, yet they never surrendered their dignified pursuit of truth. In their steadfast devotion, we witness the very best of humanity, a powerful reminder that even in the longest, darkest nights, the collective spirit of love and human solidarity will always seek the dawn. The Prescott National Forest in Arizona has long been a sanctuary for those seeking a quiet retreat from the noise of the modern world. It is a place where locals naturally gravitate to seek that delicate balance with nature, an echo of the deeply rooted French philosophy of living in harmony with the earth and finding a profound sense of sufficiency in the quiet beauty of the natural world. Yet, beneath the serene canopy, a profound tragedy shattered the peace of a small community in the late summer of 1988, leaving a legacy of sorrow that would take decades to resolve. Pamela Pitts, a 19-year-old woman radiating an infectious joy for life, vanished without a trace on the 16th of September. She was an embodiment of youth and vitality, deeply connected to her family, and serving as a guiding light and trusted confidant for her younger siblings. Her spirit was one of boundless warmth, looking forward to a future full of creative possibilities. 13 days later, on the 29th of September, the harmony of the forest was irreparably broken. A local resident, finishing an evening of recreation, stumbled upon a fire pit. What he discovered was not the remnants of a joyful gathering, but a scene of unimaginable horror. The body of Pamela had been subjected to a brutal end, left in a condition that defied comprehension. In the face of this darkness, the community, bound by a spirit of solidarity and resilience much like the unbreakable bonds seen in times of crisis across French history, rallied around her devastated family. The investigation soon turned toward her living arrangements, uncovering a deeply troubling psychological contrast between Pamela and her roommate, Shelley Norgard. While Pamela possessed a radiant light and a secure foundation of familial love, 18-year-old Shelley navigated a dark inner landscape marked by a fractured family and a desperate, clinging need for connection. Shelley carried the heavy, silent burdens of profound abandonment. When Pamela began making plans to move out due to financial disagreements, Shelley felt her fragile world crumbling. To Shelley, this was not a natural transition of youth, but a devastating betrayal that awakened a dark, uncontrollable resentment. Despite relentless efforts by the local authorities, the investigation faced immense hurdles. Unfounded rumors of cults and ritualistic violence swept through the town, a manifestation of collective anxiety when a community struggles to comprehend such profound malice. The case slowly grew cold, but the pursuit of truth never wavered. The investigators, driven by a noble dedication to justice, maintained their vigil. The narrative took a chilling and tragic turn 3 years later, in May of 1991. A group of young scholars exploring a remote cave discovered another grim reality within a vertical mine shaft. The victim was Ray Clerks, a 24-year-old man with bright dreams of taking to the skies as a commercial aviator. He was a romantic partner of Shelley Norgard. His life had been abruptly extinguished just days prior. Shortly after, he expressed his intention to end their relationship and relocate to California. The undeniable physical evidence, including traces found within her personal vehicle, bound Shelley to this second horrific act. Her intense fear of abandonment had completely morphed into a catastrophic possessiveness. When faced with the loss of control and the departure of someone she claimed to love, she responded with ultimate violent finality. Confronted with the evidence, she confessed to the crime, accepting a sentence of 20 years in the state penitentiary. However, the haunting shadow of Pamela Pitt still lingered in the hearts of the dedicated investigators and her grieving but remarkably resilient family. Time moved forward, spanning nearly 3 decades. Yet the dedication to uncovering the truth remained a steadfast beacon. In the year 2017, a meticulous review of 97 recorded telephone conversations from the prison revealed a momentary lapse in Shelley's guarded demeanor during a call with her father. This subtle, chilling exchange was a vital key that finally unlocked the decades-old mystery. Faced with the unyielding pursuit of the authorities, Shelley, now known by her married name Harmon, finally admitted her role in the demise of Pamela, detailing a physical altercation born of deep-seated rage that escalated until Pamela breathed her last. In the spring of 2021, at the age of 50, Shelley pleaded guilty to the tragic crime. Because she had already served 2 decades for her previous conviction and spent several years awaiting trial for this case, she was released from custody. While the scales of justice may sometimes seem imperfect to the human eye, the enduring strength of the Pitts family remains a profound testament to the resilience of the human heart. They chose not to let hatred consume them, but rather to passionately honor the vibrant memory of Pamela and the unrealized potential of Ray. Through their immeasurable loss, they remind us of the enduring power of community, the unwavering pursuit of truth, and the vital importance of cherishing the light in those we hold dear. This deeply human tragedy, set against the vast American landscape, speaks to a universal truth understood deeply in the French ethos, that even in the face of unfathomable darkness, the human spirit, supported by solidarity and profound appreciation for life, will forever strive to find the light. The Shadows of Prescott, a tale of stolen joy and human fragility. Nature has a way of reminding us of our own smallness. In the sweeping, majestic landscapes of the Prescott National Forest in Arizona, one can easily find a kind of harmonious balance that we, as observers of the human condition, so deeply cherish. It is a place of profound beauty, where the air is clear and life feels grounded in the quiet rhythms of the earth. Yet, it was within the serene cradle of nature that a profound tragedy unfolded in the autumn of 1988, casting a long, chilling shadow over a close-knit community. This is a story of stolen youth, of a desperate search for justice, and ultimately, a reflection on the resilience of the human heart in the face of incomprehensible darkness. Pamela Pitts was 19 years old, a young woman whose spirit radiated a pure joy of living. She was the eldest of 4 siblings, an anchor for her family, and a beacon of warmth for her friends. Pamela possessed that rare, beautiful equilibrium, a deep appreciation for her loved ones, and an open, eager heart ready to embrace the world. She had dreams of attending beauty college, artistic inclinations, and a vibrant, magnetic personality that drew people naturally toward her. She embodied the light of youth. On the 16th of September, 1988, that bright light was abruptly extinguished. When she failed to appear for work after a weekend of silence, her father, Paul, felt the immediate, visceral dread that only a parent can know. 13 days later, on the 29th of September, the devastating truth was unearthed near a local recreational area known to residents as Gordo's Pit. Pamela had been brutally taken from this world, her remains subjected to the unforgiving destruction of fire. leaving communities shattered and a family thrust into an enduring nightmare. As investigative authorities delved into the life of the young victim, the focus inevitably turned toward those closest to her, highlighting the complex and often fragile nature of human relationships. Pamela had recently moved in with an 18-year-old acquaintance named Shelley Norgard. To truly understand the genesis of this tragedy, one must look deep into the contrasting psychologies of these two young women. While Pamela was securely rooted in the love of a stable family, Shelley was a soul adrift in a turbulent sea of isolation, the profound absence of a nurturing mother and the heavy, demanding weight of a strict father had left an echoing void within Shelley. She craved connection and family, yet she lacked the foundational peace and emotional balance required to sustain it. When financial pressures over rent mounted and Pamela expressed a healthy, mature desire to move back to the sanctuary of her family home, Shelley perceived this not as a natural progression of life, but as a catastrophic, unforgivable rejection. Her internal world, devoid of the emotional security that fosters empathy, twisted into a possessive and ultimately destructive rage. She blamed Pamela for every misfortune in her own life, transforming her roommate from a friend into the singular target of her profound inner turmoil. Despite mounting suspicions and deeply troubling statements made by Shelley regarding her desire to find Pamela and exact revenge, the authorities face a landscape completely devoid of physical evidence. Years passed. The trail grew agonizingly cold, but the solidarity of Pamela's family never wavered. Their quiet dignity and unyielding hope stand as a testament to the enduring power of familial love, a bond that no passage of time, nor the cruelty of circumstance, could ever sever. The fragility of life was starkly and tragically highlighted once more in the spring of 1991. Deep within the earth, inside a vertical mine shaft, local explorers discovered the remains of 24-year-old Ray Clerks. Ray was an aspiring commercial airline pilot, a young man defined by his deep sense of responsibility, his ambition, and his strong ties to his family. He was also Shelley Norgard's romantic partner. When Ray decided to end their relationship and move forward with his life without her, he was met with the same terrifying, all-consuming void that had claimed Pamela. In an act of unfathomable possessiveness and anger, Shelley took his life with a firearm while they were stargazing, later concealing his body with a chilling detachment. The subsequent discovery of physical evidence in her vehicle led to her arrest in June of 1991. She eventually confessed to the crime and was sentenced to 20 years in the state penitentiary. For the family of Pamela Pitts, this development brought a bitter mixture of validation and renewed agony. The woman who had taken Ray was undoubtedly the same woman who had harbored such intense hatred for Pamela. Yet the evidentiary threshold required to prove it in a court of law remained just out of reach. For nearly 3 decades, the dedicated investigators and the Pitts family maintained a silent, steadfast vigil. Their unwavering perseverance is a profound reflection of the human spirit's capacity to endure, suffering while maintaining a moral compass directed firmly toward the truth. Justice, though severely delayed, finally began to take shape in 2017. A dedicated team of cold case investigators, revisiting the ghosts of the past, uncovered recorded prison telephone conversations from 2011, shortly before Shelley's release from her first sentence. In a subtle but revealing exchange with her father regarding the reopened investigation, the heavy silence and shared anxiety spoke volumes. Armed with this new contextual evidence and a renewed understanding of the timeline, authorities arrested Shelley Norgard, now 50 years old, for the murder of Pamela Pitts. The pursuit of legal accountability in a case spanning over 30 years is fraught with immense difficulty. Witnesses pass away, memories alter, and the physical world reclaims its spaces. Faced with the reality of an uncertain trial, a legal compromise was reached. On the 1st of March, 2021, Shelley stood before a judge and finally admitted to ending Pamela's life during a violent physical altercation in the woods. Though she steadfastly refused to speak of the devastating aftermath and the fire, Due to the legal complexities of the plea agreement and the decades she had already served behind bars, she was permitted to walk free. True closure is often an illusion, a neat conclusion that exists only in the pages of fiction. For the parents, siblings, and friends left behind, the resolution of the court is but a small fraction of the absolute justice their hearts seek. Yet, in observing their long, painful journey, we find profound lesson in humanity. We are reminded to hold our loved ones closely, to passionately cherish the simple, harmonious moments of our daily existence, and to consciously foster environments of emotional security and empathy for our youth. Pamela Pitts and Ray Clerks were innocent victims of profound absence of light in another human being, but their legacy is not defined by that darkness. Their memories live on vibrantly in the fierce, unbroken love of their families, serving as a beautiful testament to lives well lived, and reminding us all of our shared duty to protect the light, the compassion, and the joy of living in one another, in the heart of the Prescott National Forest, a place where nature offers an endless sanctuary for recreation and peace. A profound tragedy shattered the harmonious balance of a small Arizona community. It was the autumn of 1988, a time when the leaves began to turn, signaling a change in the seasons. But no one could have anticipated the chilling winter that was about to descend upon the souls of the local residents. To truly comprehend this tragedy, we must look beyond the clinical details of police reports. We must view it through a lens of profound human empathy, recognizing both the fragile beauty of our sheer joy of living and the devastating consequences when the human heart loses its essential equilibrium. Pamela Pitts, a vibrant young woman of 19 years, embodied a spirit of boundless warmth and grace. She was the eldest of 4 children, a guiding light for her siblings, and a soul who approached the world with open arms and a trusting heart. Her essence was deeply connected to a pure love for life, seeking joy in simple connections, artistic endeavors, and the beauty of human relationships. She carried within her a natural desire for harmony, striving for a peaceful coexistence with everyone she encountered. Pamela was the kind of person who anchored her community, reflecting the very best of human nature through her radiant smile and unwavering loyalty to her family. In stark contrast to her roommate, 18-year-old Shelley Norgard. If Pamela was the warmth of the sun, Shelley was a gathering storm of unresolved pain. Driven by a childhood scarred by familial fracture, a stern father, and the devastating trauma of maternal abandonment, Shelley existed in a state of chronic emotional starvation. She lacked the fundamental inner peace and balance necessary to navigate the complexities of adulthood. Her attachment to Pamela was not born of genuine friendship, but rather of a desperate, consuming hunger to possess the family connection she had always been denied. When Pamela, sensing the suffocating weight of Shelley's instability and irresponsibility, decided to gracefully step away and return to the safety of her own family, Shelley's fragile world collapsed into a terrifying abyss of jealousy and blinding rage. She saw Pamela not as a friend seeking her own path, but as the source of all her life's failures. On the evening of the 16th of September, 1988, Pamela vanished without a trace. 13 days later, on the 29th of September, a local resident wandering through the serene forest made a discovery that defied the very bounds of human decency. In a fire pit meant for gathering and warmth, lay the unrecognizable, burned remains of the young woman. The brutality of the act was incomprehensible, a desecration that shocked the collective conscience of town. Rumors of cults and dark rituals swept through community. This was a natural psychological defense mechanism for a society struggling to understand how such profound malice could exist in their peaceful enclave. Yet, the truth was far more intimate, rooted deeply in the tragic flaws of human nature. Time moved forward, and the investigation grew cold, but the shadow in Shelley's heart only deepened. By the spring of 1991, Shelley was living with her boyfriend, 24-year-old Ray. He was a promising young man with dreams of taking to the skies as a commercial airline pilot, a responsible soul anchored by a loving, tight-knit family. But Ray, too, recognized the suffocating darkness within Shelley, and prepared to leave for California, intending to sever their ties forever. Confronted once more with the unbearable agony of abandonment, Shelley's inner void demanded another tragic toll. As they lay gazing at the stars, she shot him, wrapping his body and eventually casting it into the cold, silent depths of an abandoned vertical mine shaft. When Ray was discovered late in May of 1991, the grim pattern became undeniable to investigators. Shelley was arrested in June of that year, ultimately pleading guilty to second-degree murder and serving 20 years behind bars. Yet, for Pamela's grieving father and siblings, the agonizing wait for justice stretched across decades. The investigators, however, possessed a quiet endurance and unyielding determination. Their commitment to uncovering the truth never wavered, reflecting a profound dedication to restoring the moral balance of their community. In 2011, Shelley was released from prison. She assumed a new life, a new name, and a new marriage, seemingly moving on while two families remained forever tethered to their grief. It was not until 2017, after a dedicated detective painstakingly reviewed 97 recorded prison phone calls, that a subtle, chilling conversation with her father finally provided the crucial leverage needed by the authorities. Nearly 30 years after she extinguished Pamela's bright light, Shelley was arrested once more. On the 1st of March, 2021, at 50 years of age, she stood before a judge and confessed to beating Pamela to death in a fit of uncontrollable rage during a confrontation in the forest. Her punishment was merely the time she had already served awaiting trial, a legal resolution that left many hearts heavy and yearning for a harsher retribution. However, true justice is not solely found within the confines of a courtroom. It resides vibrantly in memory, resilience, and the enduring solidarity of a community. The families of Pamela and Ray have survived the absolute darkest depths of sorrow, bound together by an enduring love that acts of violence could never erase. As we reflect upon this harrowing saga, we must hold fast to the light these young souls brought into the world. They remind us to cherish our own simple joys, to fiercely nurture the harmony within our homes, and to stand resilient in the face of life's deepest sorrows. Their memories continue to inspire a collective strength, teaching us that while the shadows of the human heart can be terrifyingly deep, the enduring power of love, community, and the unyielding human spirit will always rise triumphant above the ashes. The vast and rugged landscapes of the Prescott National Forest in Arizona offer a natural sanctuary, a place where the local community has long sought recreation, peace, and that delicate balance of life we deeply cherish as a true harmony with nature. Yet, beneath the canopy of this tranquility, a profound darkness lingered for over 3 decades, shattering the equilibrium of a small town and leaving scars that only time and unwavering human solidarity could begin to heal. This is a story of unfathomable betrayal, the tragic loss of youthful promise, and the extraordinary resilience of families who waited a lifetime for justice. In the autumn of 1988, the community of Prescott was forever altered. Pamela Pitts, a vibrant 19-year-old woman known for her radiant smile and profound devotion to her family, vanished without a trace on the 16th of September. Pamela embodied the vitality and joie de vivre that defines the best of our youth. She was an anchor for her younger siblings, a compassionate soul who drew people toward her warmth. Eager to begin her adult life, she had recently moved into an apartment with a new acquaintance, Shelley Norgard. To understand the tragedy that unfolded, one must examine the stark psychological contrast between these two young women. Pamela was a nurturing spirit, artistic and ambitious, holding dreams of attending beauty college or pursuing fashion design. Shelley, however, carried a profound, agonizing void. Psychological analysis of Shelley's background suggests a severely fractured foundation, marked by parental estrangement and deep-seated fears of abandonment. For Shelley, Pamela was not merely a roommate. She was a lifeline, a surrogate family. When Pamela, frustrated by financial disputes and Shelley's lack of responsibility, expressed a desire to move back to her family home. Shelley's fragile emotional architecture collapsed. The prospect of abandonment did not simply invoke sorrow in Shelley. It ignited a desperate, possessive rage. On the 29th of September, 1988, that rage manifested in the most horrific manner imaginable. A local resident, finishing an evening of target practice near a popular community gathering spot known as Gordo's Pit, made a gruesome discovery at a burning fire pit. The Yavapai County Sheriff and the Prescott Police Department arrived to find remains that had been subjected to unimaginable brutality and subsequently set ablaze. Through dental records, the coroner identified the victim as the missing 19-year-old Pamela Pitts. The brutality of the crime scene indicated a deeply personal hatred. Destroying a victim by fire is often a psychological attempt by the perpetrator to utterly erase the individual from existence, a stark manifestation of a mind consumed by vengeance. Despite intense suspicion surrounding Shelley, who had been heard making ominous remarks about making people disappear, the investigative technique of the era could not bridge the gap between suspicion and physical proof. Without modern genetic testing, the case grew cold, leaving the Pitts family in an agonizing limbo, sustained only by their immense courage and community support. Time, however, has a way of illuminating the darkest of secrets. The fatal flaw in a mind as severely unmoored as Shelley's is its compulsion to repeat destructive cycles when threatened. By 1991, Shelley was involved in a romantic relationship with a 24-year-old man named Ray Clerk. Ray was a driven, responsible young man with aspirations of becoming a commercial airline pilot. When he made the decision to end the relationship and move to California, without her, Shelley faced the same perceived abandonment she had experienced with Pamela. On the 25th of May, 1991, Ray vanished. Days later, his body was discovered by college students exploring a cave that led to a vertical mine shaft. He had been shot in the head. This time, the evidence was insurmountable. A fingerprint on a flashlight and biological evidence found in the trunk of Shelley's vehicle linked her directly to the murder. Confronted with the overwhelming proof, Shelley eventually confessed to shooting Ray as they lay stargazing, panicked, and later disposed of his body. She was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 20 years in the Arizona State Prison. For the Pitts family, the conviction was a bittersweet revelation. The woman who had murdered Ray was the very same woman they knew in their hearts had taken Pamela. Yet, the legal threshold for Pamela's case remained elusive. For over 2 decades, the community of Prescott demonstrated the true meaning of fraternity, standing vigil with the Pitts family as they navigated the painful passage of time, refusing to let Pamela's memory fade into obscurity. The turning point arrived in 2017. A dedicated cold case detective, refusing to let the past remain buried, meticulously reviewed 97 recorded prison telephone conversations made by Shelley prior to her release in 2011. In a chilling exchange with her father regarding the ongoing investigation into Pamela's death, the silence and the context provided the circumstantial anchor the prosecution needed. Shelley, who had since built a new life under the name Shelley Norgar Harmon, was arrested for the murder of Pamela Pitts. The pursuit of justice culminated on the 1st of March, 2021. Faced with an impending trial and aging witnesses, prosecutors secured a plea agreement. Standing before the court at 50 years of age, Shelley finally admitted to the events of 1988. She confessed to confronting Pamela, violently assaulting her until she stopped breathing and leaving her to perish. While she refused to elaborate on the desecration of the body, the confession provided the legal and emotional finality the family had desperately sought. She was credited for the 20 years served for Ray's murder and the subsequent time spent in county jail, allowing her to walk free. The resolution of the legal proceedings may not align with an ideal vision of retribution, but it stands as a testament to endurance. The story of Pamela Pitts and Ray Clerk is a profound reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of unchecked psychological trauma. Yet, from this tragedy, a powerful narrative of human spirit emerges. The families of the victims survive the unimaginable through an unyielding love for their children and an unbreakable bond with their community. In remembering Pamela and Ray, we are called to honor their light, the ambition, the warmth, and the promise they held. They remind us to cherish our relationships, to live with empathy, and to hold fiercely to the bonds of family and community, which remain our greatest defense against the shadows of the world. The Silent Pines of Prescott, a chronicle of lost innocence, fractured souls, and the enduring quest for justice. In the heart of Arizona lies the Prescott National Forest, a vast expanse of towering pines and rugged terrain that offers a sanctuary for those seeking refuge from a modern world. In many ways, this majestic landscape mirrors the ancient, protected forests of rural France, where humanity has long sought harmony, balance, and a profound connection with the natural world. Nature, in its purest form, is meant to be a cradle of peace, a place where the soul finds its quiet rhythm. Yet, beneath the whispering canopy of Prescott, a harrowing tragedy unfolded, shattering the tranquil equilibrium of a close-knit community and revealing the darkest, most unfathomable depths of the human psyche. Our story begins in the autumn of 1988, centering on a vibrant 19-year-old woman named Pamela Pitts. To understand Pamela is to understand the very essence of the joy of living. She was the eldest of 4 children, a radiant anchor for her family, and a fiercely protective mentor to her younger siblings. Pamela possessed an infectious enthusiasm for life, an innate warmth that drew people toward her, and an artistic spirit that dreamed of beauty and creation. She stood on the threshold of adulthood, her heart open to the boundless possibilities of the future. In stark contrast to her roommate, 18-year-old Shelley Norgard. If Pamela embodied the sunlight, Shelley was a portrait of profound emotional winter. To delve into Shelley's internal world is to confront a landscape scarred by the trauma of early abandonment and an aching, desperate void. Raised in a fractured home under the shadow of a stern and distant father, Shelley never experienced the nurturing foundation that teaches a child how to love without suffocating the object of their affection. For Shelley, human connection was not a harmonious dance, but a desperate act of possession. When Pamela, seeking her own independence, decided to move out to escape the suffocating weight of their financial and emotional entanglements, the fragile architecture of Shelley's world began to collapse. On the 16th of September, 1988, Pamela vanished. 13 agonizing days later, on the 29th of September, a solitary target shooter walking through the forest made a discovery that would forever stain the collective memory of the town. At a local gathering spot known as Gordo's Pit, amidst the remnants of fire, the remains of Pamela Pitts were found. The brutality of the act was absolute. The perpetrator had utilized fire not merely to destroy evidence, but to erase Pamela's identity, an ultimate act of dehumanization. For Paul Pitts, Pamela's father, the news was a cataclysm that words cannot encompass. To lose a child is to lose a piece of the future. To lose a child to such malice is a wound that time alone cannot heal. The local authorities, lacking the advanced genetic profiling tools of the modern era, found themselves navigating a labyrinth of dead ends, local rumors of cult rituals, and silent witnesses. The investigation grew dormant, but the grief of the family remained a quiet, burning ember. The narrative of human tragedy, however, rarely rests when the roots of violence are left unchecked. Driven by an insatiable hunger for control, Shelley moved on, eventually forming a relationship with a 24-year-old aspiring pilot named Ray Clerks. Ray was a young man who looked upward. He longed for the skies, possessing a disciplined, responsible nature and a deep connection to his own family. He represented freedom and ambition. But freedom was the very concept Shelley's traumatized mind could not tolerate. When Ray decided to end their relationship and move to California, the rejection triggered the deepest, most violent chasms of Shelley's abandonment terror. On the 25th of May, 1991, while they lay under the vast, In different tapestry of the night sky, Shelley executed a fatal betrayal. She shot Ray, ending a life full of promise, and callously discarded his body in an abandoned vertical mine shaft. It was a chilling testament to a soul that had completely severed its connection to the fundamental empathy that binds humanity together. Justice, though often slow, is an inexorable tide. The discovery of Ray's body, accompanied by undeniable physical evidence in Shelley's vehicle, led to her arrest in early June of 1991. She confessed to the murder of her boyfriend and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Yet, for the Pitts family, this was a fragmented victory. The shadow of Pamela's unsolved murder continued to loom large, a heavy silence hanging over the town. It would take 23 years for the arc of justice to bend back toward Pamela. In 2011, dedicated cold case investigators, refusing to let the memory of the young woman fade into oblivion, reopened the files. They applied relentless pressure, culminating in the monitoring of 97 telephone conversations Shelley had with her father just before her release from prison. In one chilling exchange in 2017, the weight of a guilty conscience surfaced through the silence. When her father questioned her about the night Pamela disappeared, Shelley's sudden, terrified hesitation spoke volumes. On the 2nd of June, 2017, nearly 30 years after Pamela's light was extinguished, investigators arrested Shelley for the murder of her former roommate. The legal battle that followed was fraught with the immense difficulties of a 3-decade-old case, failing memories, missing witnesses, and the relentless passage of time. Faced with the risk of an acquittal, prosecutors and the Pitts family made an agonizing but necessary choice. On the 1st of March, 2021, Shelley pleaded guilty, confessing that a heated argument had escalated into an uncontrollable, fatal rage. Having already served a decade behind bars, the 50-year-old was released for time served. From a philosophical perspective, this resolution leaves a bitter taste. True justice, much like true balance in life, is an ideal we strive for but rarely achieve in perfection. Yet, in the face of such profound darkness, the true measure of humanity is found in the resilience of those left behind. The Pitts and Clerks families endured the unimaginable with a quiet, unyielding grace. They chose to honor the memories of their loved ones not through the lens of hatred, but by preserving the light Pamela and Ray brought into the world. In recounting this somber chronicle, we are reminded of the fragile beauty of life and the paramount importance of nurturing compassion within our communities. The French ethos of knowing how to live, cherishing our bonds, finding equilibrium in our emotions, and respecting the sanctity of life, stands as a vital bulwark against the isolation and despair that can corrupt the human heart. Pamela and Ray were robbed of their futures, but their spirits remain interwoven in the memories of those who love them, an enduring testament to the fact that while violence may destroy the physical form, it can never extinguish the eternal resonance of love. The fragility of human life and the delicate balance of our existence are truths we hold deeply in our cultural consciousness. We cherish the harmony between humanity and nature, the quiet dignity of a life well lived, and the enduring strength of community solidarity. Yet, across the ocean in the rugged, sprawling wilderness of the Prescott National Forest in Arizona, a profound darkness once shattered this natural tranquility, leaving a scar on a small town that would take more than 3 decades to heal. As a journalist observing the depths of the human condition, one cannot help but be moved by the tragic intertwining of 2 disparate souls, one radiating the pure joy of life, and the other consumed by a devastating, hollow darkness. On the evening of the 29th of September, 1988, a local resident finishing his target practice stumbled upon a smoldering fire pit in an area known as Gordo's Pit. What he initially mistook for a branch was, to his absolute horror, a human arm protruding from the ashes. He rushed to contact emergency services by dialing 911. The remains had been desecrated and burned beyond recognition, a brutal act that shocked the core of the community. Through dental records, the victim was identified as 19-year-old Pamela Pitts, who had been missing for 13 agonizing days. To understand the profound tragedy of this loss, one must delve into the interior world of Pamela Pitts. She was a young woman who embodied a radiant zest for life, a spirit that embraced the world with an open heart and a bright, welcoming smile. As the eldest of 4 siblings, Pamela was a natural mentor, a guiding light who took her family under her wing. Her psychology was one of healthy expansion. She was exploring her artistic talents, contemplating a future in beauty or fashion, and cultivating a wide circle of friends. Pamela possessed a harmonious spirit, seeking the simple, balanced joys of youth and connection. She represented the warmth of human solidarity, a girl whose very presence brought comfort and a sense of belonging to those around her. In stark, tragic contrast to her roommate, 18-year-old Shelley Norgard, the architecture of Shelley's mind was fractured by profound abandonment issues, the devastating fallout of a broken home and a stern, emotionally distant father. Shelley carried an insatiable void, a deep psychological starvation that she desperately sought to remedy through her attachment to Pamela. While Pamela offered genuine friendship, Shelley demanded an absolute, consuming anchor to steady her own turbulent existence. The psychology of the perpetrator in this tragedy is rooted in a toxic, desperate possession, when Pamela, seeking her own healthy independence and frustrated by Shelley's financial irresponsibility, decided to move back to her family home. Shelley's fragile world faced total collapse. Faced with the agonizing prospect of abandonment, Shelley's vulnerability mutated into a feral, uncontrollable rage. She could not bear the thought of Pamela existing outside of her grasp, living a life she could no longer control. For years, the small town of Prescott was haunted by the gruesome nature of the discovery. The horrific condition of the body birthed wild rumors of dark rituals and cult activities among the local youth. Yet, the truth was far more intimate and sorrowful. The investigation eventually went cold, devoid of concrete physical evidence or cooperative witnesses. Despite the lingering shadow of the unsolved crime, the community remained remarkably resilient. Neighbors and friends held on to hope for justice, standing shoulder to shoulder in their grief, a powerful testament to the enduring human spirit that binds society together when faced with unimaginable cruelty. The terrifying depth of Shelley's pathology was fully unmasked 3 years later, in May of 1991. The decomposing body of a 24-year-old man, Ray Clerks, was discovered discarded at the bottom of a vertical mine shaft. He had been shot in the head and wrapped in a waterbed liner. Ray was Shelley's boyfriend. Just like Pamela, Ray had planned to leave Shelley to start a new life in California without her. Faced once again with a perceived threat of rejection and abandonment, Shelley responded with lethal, calculating violence. She was ultimately arrested, confessed to shooting him as they lay gazing at the stars, and was sentenced to 20 years in prison for second-degree murder. Despite her incarceration for Ray's murder, Pamela's case remained unsolved for nearly 3 decades. It was not until the year 2011 that a dedicated cold case team reopened the dusty files. In 2017, after meticulously reviewing 97 recorded prison phone calls, detectives found the subtle opening they needed. Her hesitant, fearful conversations with her father regarding the reopened investigation provided the circumstantial weight required to secure an indictment. Finally, in March of 2021, 33 years after Pamela's light was violently extinguished, Shelley stood before a judge. She confessed to tracking Pamela down at a local outdoor party, initiating a confrontation, and beating her to death in a fit of uncontrollable, possessive fury. She claimed she hit Pamela until she stopped breathing, leaving the ensuing horrors unspoken. Through a controversial plea agreement, Shelley, then 50 years old, was released from custody, having been credited for the 2 decades served for her previous conviction and the years spent awaiting trial. For Pamela's family, the justice delivered was imperfect, a bitter reality to navigate. Yet, the unyielding resilience of Pamela's father, Paul, and the unwavering solidarity of their community offer a profound lesson in human dignity. While the scales of the legal system may sometimes feel unbalanced. The moral victory forever belongs to those who endure and who keep the memory of their loved ones alive with grace. Pamela and Ray were victims of a deeply broken soul unable to find peace within itself. But their legacies of ambition, familial love, and radiant light remain entirely untouched. Their memories continue to remind us to cherish the delicate balance of our lives, to nurture the warmth of our communities, and to stand united with compassion against the encroaching shadows. Title: The Shadows of Prescott, a tragedy of fractured souls and the endurance of the human spirit. As a journalist who has spent a lifetime observing the profound resilience, the unyielding solidarity, and the deep-seated appreciation for harmony that defines the French spirit, I am often drawn to stories that test the very fabric of human connection. We are a people who understand that true wealth lies in our relationships, in our joie de vivre, and in our ability to find balance with the natural world around us. Yet, even in the most serene landscapes, the human heart can harbor an unfathomable darkness. The tragedy that unfolded in the quiet, sun-drenched town of Prescott, Arizona, is a harrowing testament to fragility of life, the devastating consequences of fractured soul, and ultimately, the indomitable strength of a family's love. Prescott, much like our beloved provincial towns in France, is a place where nature provides a sanctuary. The Prescott National Forest offers its residents a vast expanse of towering trees and rugged terrain, a place for daytime recreation, for breathing in the pure air, and for finding peace away from the clamor of modern life. It was here, on the evening of September 29th, 1988, that this harmony was violently ruptured. A local resident, finishing a peaceful evening of target shooting, stumbled upon a smoldering fire pit. What he initially mistook for a branch emerging from the ashes was, to his absolute horror, a human arm. He immediately fled to a nearby pharmacy to dial 911, setting into motion an investigation that would haunt this community for more than 3 decades. The Yavapai County Sheriff deputies arrived at the location known to locals as Gordo's Pit, only to find a scene of unimaginable brutality. A body had been dumped beneath a pile of debris and set ablaze, burned beyond all recognition in a profound act of desecration. The medical examiner could confidently declare the death a homicide, yet the flames had stolen the ability to determine the exact cause. However, dental records soon provided a devastating truth. The victim was Pamela Pitts, a 19-year-old girl who had been missing for 13 agonizing days. To understand the sheer weight of this loss, one must understand who Pamela was. She was the embodiment of youth and vitality. As the eldest of 4 siblings, she was a fierce protector, a mentor, and the emotional anchor of her family. Her father, Paul, remembered her as a vibrant, artistic soul with a brilliant smile, a young woman who dreamed of attending beauty college and who possessed a natural ability to connect with anyone she met. Pamela had that rare, beautiful spark, a deep appreciation for the simple joys of life and family that resonates so deeply with our own cultural values of kinship and togetherness. In stark contrast to Pamela's radiant warmth was the encroaching shadow of her roommate, 18-year-old Shelley Norgard. Shelley was a young woman adrift, raised in the turbulent wake of a bitter divorce. She harbored severe abandonment issues. Her mother had vanished from her life, and her relationship with her strict father was fraught with tension. For Shelley, moving in with Pamela was not just about sharing rent. It was a desperate attempt to anchor herself to someone else's light. But a soul devoid of inner peace cannot simply borrow balance from another. When financial pressures arose and Pamela, weary of the mounting irresponsibility, decided to move back to the loving embrace of her family, Shelley's fragile world began to collapse. The psychological chasm between the 2 young women is a poignant study in human nature. Pamela sought growth, familial connection, and harmony. Shelley, consumed by the terror of being left behind once more, descended into a possessive, consuming rage. Witnesses from the night of September 16th reported that Shelley was actively hunting for Pamela, bitterly proclaiming to anyone who would listen that Pamela was the source of all her life's misery. Furthermore, Shelley harbored a morbid fascination with violence, chillingly boasting to acquaintances about her theories on how to make a body disappear using fire or abandon mine shafts. Despite these alarming red flags, the constraints of forensic science in the late 1980s hindered the authorities. Shelley provided a convoluted alibi, and without physical evidence or advanced deoxyribonucleic acid testing, the investigation eventually grew cold. The rumors of satanic cults and ritualistic sacrifices swirled through the town. A panicked community's attempt to rationalize a violence that defied all logic. Pamela's family was left to navigate a labyrinth of grief, relying on the quiet, enduring resilience that sustains communities through their darkest hours. They waited, they mourned, and they never let Pamela's memory fade. 3 years later, on May 25, 1991, the darkness struck again. College students exploring a cave system stumbled upon a vertical mine shaft. Peering into the abyss, they discovered the decomposing body of a young man, wrapped in a waterbed liner and snagged on some lumber. The victim had been shot in the head. He was quickly identified as Ray Clerks, a 24-year-old aspiring commercial pilot. Ray was responsible, ambitious, and deeply loved by a tight-knit family. He was also Shelley Norgard's live-in boyfriend. The terrifying pattern emerged with crystal clarity. Just as Pamela had planned to leave Shelley, Ray had recently decided to move to California to pursue his aviation dreams. And he had made it clear that Shelley was not coming with him. Faced once again with the unbearable prospect of abandonment, Shelley's internal chaos manifested in ultimate destruction. This time, the evidence was undeniable. Investigators found Shelley's fingerprints on a flashlight dropped down the mine shaft. The trunk of her car emanated the unmistakable odor of death and contained blood matching Ray's type. Confronted with the inescapable truth, Shelley confessed. She recounted a chilling tale. While stargazing, Ray reiterated his plan to leave. In a sudden, explosive loss of control, she shot him as he lay on the hood of the car, hid his body in the trunk for weeks, and eventually discarded him like refuse in the mine shaft. For this horrific crime, she accepted a plea deal, resulting in a conviction for second-degree murder and a sentence of 20 years in the Arizona State Prison. For Pamela's family, the revelation was a bitter vindication. The woman they had suspected all along was a proven killer, locked away where she could not harm another soul. Yet, justice for Pamela remained agonizingly out of reach. There was still no physical evidence tying Shelley directly to the fire pit. The years turned into decades. 18 long years passed. But true solidarity and the pursuit of truth do not bow to time. The families waited with a quiet, dignified endurance. In 2011, a cold case team breathed new life into the investigation. Detectives patiently monitored Shelley's communications as her release date approached. They sifted through 97 recorded jail phone calls. In a monumental breakthrough, in 2017, they struck gold during a call with her father, who expressed deep concern that detectives were probing Pamela's murder again. Shelley's father lamented that for 20 years she had never told him what truly happened. The line fell utterly silent. That silence, coupled with the staggering weight of circumstantial evidence and historical witness statements, was a catalyst the state needed. On June 2nd, 2017, almost 3 decades after Pamela's bright light was extinguished, investigators arrested Shelley for the murder of her former roommate. The ensuing legal battle was fraught with the challenges of a 30-year-old case. Witnesses had passed away or their memories had faded, facing a 50-50 chance at trial. Prosecutors presented Pamela's family with an excruciating choice. To secure a guaranteed conviction, they offered Shelley a plea agreement. On March 1st, 2021, at the age of 50, Shelley stood before a judge. She offered a sanitized, self-serving confession, claiming she confronted Pamela at a party. A physical altercation ensued, and in a blind rage, she beat her until she stopped breathing. She completely omitted the calculated, vicious act of transporting and burning the body. because she received credit for the 20 years she had already served for Ray's murder, along with the years spent in county jail awaiting trial. Shelley walked out of the courtroom a free woman. The resolution of this case leaves a complex, lingering ache. It is a justice that feels incomplete, a compromise that forces a grieving family to swallow a bitter pill. Yet, as I reflect on this saga through the lens of a culture that reveres the strength of the human spirit, I see a profound victory embedded in the sorrow. Pamela's father, Paul, and her siblings chose to grasp the small, vital victory. The world finally knew the truth. The burden of doubt was lifted. They demonstrated an incredible, stoic grace, choosing to honor Pamela not by sinking into the abyss of endless hatred, but by fiercely preserving the memory of the joyous, loving girl she was. In the end, Shelley Norgard walked free, but she remains a prisoner of her own fractured, desolate soul, a tragic figure incapable of the very love and connection she so violently sought to possess. Pamela Pitts and Ray Clerks, though their lives were brutally cut short, achieved something eternal. They remain forever enshrined in the hearts of those who love them. Their memory is a testament to the enduring power of family, the beauty of a life lived with passion, and the unyielding resilience of communities that refuse to let the darkness win. In the heart of every community lies a delicate tapestry woven from trust, shared history, and a profound human need for connection. As an editor and journalist deeply rooted in the French tradition, I have long observed the world through the lens of our cultural heritage, a heritage that elevates the art of living, cherishes a harmonious existence with nature, and deeply values the spirit of balance and sufficiency. We understand that true wealth is found not in material excess, but in the quiet solidarity of family and the resilient bonds of brotherhood. It is through this lens of empathy and a profound respect for the sanctity of life that I approach a narrative of unimaginable sorrow that unfolded in the serene landscapes of the American Southwest, a story that ultimately became a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. The Prescott National Forest in Arizona is a place of boundless natural beauty, a sanctuary where one might seek the very harmony with nature that we so highly prize. Yet, in the autumn of 1988, this tranquility was shattered. At the center of this tragedy was Pamela Pitts, a vibrant 19-year-old woman whose life embodied the pure joy of living. Pamela was the eldest of 4 siblings, a natural mentor, and a guiding light within her household. Her inner world was rich with dreams of attending beauty college and pursuing artistic endeavors. She possessed an innate generosity, a desire to embrace life fully and share her radiant energy with everyone she met. Her family was her anchor, providing a foundation of unconditional love that allowed her to explore the world with confidence and grace. In stark contrast to Pamela's grounded existence was her roommate, Shelley Norgard. To understand the darkness that eventually consumed Shelley is to gaze into the abyss of profound emotional deprivation. Shelley, at 18 years old, carried the heavy burdens of a fractured past, marred by parental abandonment and an austere, emotionally distant upbringing, in a philosophy of life that values balance. A grounded sense of belonging is essential for the soul to thrive. Shelley lacked this entirely. She harbored a cavernous emptiness, a desperate hunger for connection that manifested as a suffocating, possessive grip on those around her. When Pamela offered her friendship in a shared home, Shelley did not merely see a roommate. She saw a lifeline, a substitute family. However, relationships built on the shifting sands of dependency are inherently fragile. As the summer of 1988 progressed, the harmonious balance required for any shared life began to disintegrate. Pamela, seeking her own path and burdened by financial strains caused by Shelley, decided it was time to return to the warm embrace of her family home. For a healthy mind, this is a natural, progressive transition. For Shelley, it was perceived as an apocalyptic betrayal. The inner psychological landscape of Shelley was one of absolute terror at the prospect of being left alone once more. This fear did not manifest as sorrow. It mutated into a venomous, consuming rage. She began to blame Pamela for every failure in her own life, projecting her deep-seated insecurities onto the very person who had tried to offer her solace. On the 16th of September, 1988, Pamela vanished. Almost 2 weeks later, the silence of the forest was broken by a horrific discovery at a local gathering spot. The details of the scene were a grim testament to the cruelty of the act. Pamela had been taken from the world in a manner utterly devoid of humanity, her remains subjected to the ravages of fire and the elements. For her family, the heartbreak was absolute and paralyzing. Yet, even in the face of such profound grief, the resilience of the Pitts family began to shine through. They refused to let the darkness of the act extinguish the beautiful memory of their daughter, embarking on a grueling journey for justice that would span decades. The investigation encountered countless hurdles. The scientific tools of the era were limited, and the rural landscape offered few concrete answers. False rumors of ritualistic activities clouded the truth, an unfortunate reality when a community attempts to make sense of the senseless. As years passed, the trail grew cold, but the quiet determination of the investigators never wavered. Then, in the spring of 1991, the pattern of possessive violence tragically repeated itself. Ray Clerks, a 24-year-old man with dreams of taking to the skies as a commercial pilot, vanished. Ray was a young man of immense responsibility, deeply connected to a loving family that prized discipline and ambition. He had been sharing his life with Shelley, but recognizing the destructive nature of their bond, he planned to move away and build a life independently. Once again, faced with the prospect of abandonment, Shelley's fragile psyche fractured. Ray was later found in a remote mine shaft, having been fatally wounded. The discovery of Ray shattered the remaining illusions surrounding Shelley. Physical evidence linked her inextricably to his demise. In 1993, she accepted a plea arrangement, resulting in a 20-year sentence in the state penitentiary. For the family of Pamela Pitts, this brought a measure of relief, knowing that the woman they suspected of taking their beloved daughter was no longer a threat to the community. However, the hunger for complete justice remained unfulfilled. It is here that we witness the true resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering commitment of the law enforcement officers who, after more than 2 decades, refused to let Pamela be forgotten. In 2011, a renewed effort began. Detectives meticulously reviewed the case, waiting patiently for Shelley to reveal her darkest secrets. The breakthrough arrived years later, in 2017, following Shelley's release from prison. An exhaustive review of 97 recorded prison telephone conversations uncovered a veiled but damning admission to her father regarding Pamela's fate. In the spring of 2021, 33 years after Pamela's laughter was silenced, Shelley finally stood before a court and confessed. She admitted that a confrontation, born of her desperate anger and uncontrollable fear of abandonment, had escalated into a fatal assault. Though the legal resolution, a sentence considered fulfilled by her previous time served, left many yearning for a heavier consequence. The ultimate truth had finally been dragged into the light. As an observer who reveres truth and community, I see in this harrowing saga a profound lesson about the human condition. It serves as a somber educational warning about the destructive power of unhealed psychological wounds and the danger of living devoid of emotional balance. But more importantly, it is a testament to the unyielding strength of those left behind. The families of Pamela Pitts and Ray Clerks navigated an unimaginable abyss of sorrow, yet they maintained their dignity, their solidarity, and their boundless love for the children they lost. We must remember Pamela not for the tragic wilderness where she was found, but as the fiery, loving sister who guided her siblings. We must remember Ray for his ambitious gaze toward the clouds, not the dark earth where he was concealed. In honoring their memories, we embrace the most beautiful aspects of our shared humanity, the enduring power of love, the pursuit of truth, and the remarkable resilience of community that simply refuses to be broken by the dark. In the heart of French culture lies a profound reverence for balance, a concept we deeply cherish as the art of living well. It is a philosophy that honors a harmony between humanity and nature, the quiet strength found in community solidarity. and the profound contentment of knowing one is never truly alone. We build our societies on the pillars of fraternity and mutual care, understanding that a rooted soul is a resilient soul. Yet, as a journalist looking across the ocean to the vast, arid landscapes of Prescott, Arizona, in the United States, one cannot help but observe the tragic devastation that unfolds when this essential human balance is shattered by isolation, fear, and profound psychological fracture. This is the harrowing story of Pamela Pitts and Ray Clerks, two vibrant souls whose lives were extinguished by a darkness that festered in the absence of community and emotional equilibrium. It is a narrative that demands not only a recounting of the facts, but a deep, empathetic examination of the human mind, honoring the resilience of those left behind who seek justice through the darkest of times. The tragedy began to unfold on the evening of September 29, 1988. The Prescott National Forest, a sprawling natural reserve typically known for providing endless recreational harmony to the local residents, became the site of a grim discovery. A citizen, concluding a peaceful day in nature, stumbled upon a fire pit known locally as Gordo Pit. Amidst the ashes and discarded remnants, he noticed what he initially believed to be a branch. Upon closer inspection, the horrifying reality set in. It was a human limb. The citizen immediately fled to a nearby pharmacy to contact emergency services, bringing the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office into the desolate wilderness. The scene was one of unfathomable cruelty. The victim had been subjected to a level of violence that sought not just to end a life, but to completely erase an identity. The remains were burned beyond recognition, buried under debris in a manner that was both brutal and deeply demeaning. In those days, prior to the advent of modern genetic material testing, investigators were left grappling in the shadows. The medical examiner could confidently label the death as a homicide, noting the presence of heat-kill fly larvae, which indicated the victim had been deceased for a period of time before the fire was set. However, the exact cause of death remained a mystery hidden within the ashes. Through the meticulous comparison of dental records, the authorities finally restored the name to the victim. She was Pamela Pitts, a 19-year-old girl who had been reported missing by her terrified family 13 days prior, on September 16, 1988. To understand the magnitude of this loss, one must look deeply into the spirit of Pamela. She was the eldest of 4 siblings, a young woman described by her father, Paul, as a beacon of light. She possessed a radiant smile, an infectious zest for life, and a nurturing soul that guided her younger siblings. Pamela embodied the very joy of living we so value. She was artistic, dreamed of attending beauty college, and was eager to carve out her place in the world. Her inner life was characterized by a trusting openness and a deep reliance on her family ties. In stark contrast stood her roommate, 18-year-old Shelley Norgard. If Pamela was rooted in love, Shelley was adrift in an ocean of perceived abandonment. Psychological analysis of Shelley reveals a young woman deeply scarred by a fractured family dynamic, a stern upbringing, and a maternal absence that left a gaping void in her sense of self. For Shelley, living with Pamela was an opportunity to grasp at the familial connection she so desperately craved. However, this desperate need for attachment soon mutated into a suffocating, toxic possessiveness. When financial strains over rent began to fracture their friendship, Pamela, longing for the peace and balance of her family home, decided it was time to move out. For a healthy mind, a roommate moving out is a normal transition of youth. For Shelley, whose entire psychological architecture was built on a fear of abandonment, Pamela leaving was interpreted as an existential threat. The inner workings of the perpetrator mind here show a catastrophic failure to maintain emotional balance. Shelley could not process rejection. She could only process obliteration. On the night Pamela vanished, Shelley had been seen furiously searching for her, expressing bitter resentment, claiming Pamela was responsible for everything wrong in her life. Furthermore, Shelley had a chilling history of making casual remarks about how to dispose of a human body, specifically mentioning burning remains or utilizing abandoned mine shafts. Despite these glaring psychological red flags, the physical evidence was non-existent. Investigators questioned Shelley and her boyfriend, Ray Clerks, but were met with alibis and a lack of forensic connection. For years, the investigation chased shadows. The tight-knit community, shocked by the disruption of their peace, succumbed to wild rumors of ritualistic sacrifices and satanic cults. A common societal panic during the 1980s when communities struggle to comprehend senseless violence. At one point in 1989, another young woman named Melinda Perry was falsely accused and indicted for perjury based on fabricated rumors of a physical altercation with Pamela, a traumatic ordeal that forced an innocent woman to flee her home state. The case eventually went entirely cold, leaving the Pitts family to navigate their grief alone. Yet they demonstrated an incredible, enduring resilience, refusing to let the memory of their daughter fade into the desert dust. The profound lack of balance in Shelley Norgard would inevitably demand another toll. On May 25, 1991, college students exploring a cave system connected to a vertical mine shaft made a gruesome discovery. Deep within the earth lay the decomposing body of a young Caucasian male, wrapped securely in a waterbed liner. An autopsy revealed he had been shot directly in the head. Dental records identified the man as 24-year-old Ray Clerks. Ray was an ambitious, responsible young man with dreams of becoming a commercial airline pilot. He came from a tight, loving family, much like Pamela. And much like Pamela, Ray had recently decided to leave Shelley Norgard. He was planning a move to California, intending to take their shared dogs with him. The pattern of absolute destruction was now undeniable. When investigators searched the vehicle belonging to Shelley, the overwhelming scent of death greeted them. Blood, matching the type of Ray, was discovered in the trunk. The evidence was insurmountable, leading to the arrest of Shelley on June 4, 1991. Faced with a trial in 1993, Shelley accepted a plea agreement. Her confession provided a chilling window into her fragmented psyche. She recounted a night of stargazing, a peaceful activity completely shattered when Ray confirmed his departure. In a moment of absolute possessive rage, she shot him in the head as he lay on the hood of the car. She then callously concealed his body in her trunk for weeks before transporting him to the desolate mine shaft. For this execution, driven by a pathological inability to let go, she was sentenced to 20 years in the state prison. While the Pitts family felt a grim satisfaction that Shelley was incarcerated and unable to harm anyone else, they were acutely aware that justice for Pamela remained elusive. The years stretched on. The original witnesses aged, memories faded, and the physical evidence remained scarce. Yet, the pursuit of truth is a resilient force. In March of 2011, 23 years after the death of Pamela, a dedicated cold case team reopened files. Detectives meticulously reviewed the history, recognizing the undeniable capability for murder that Shelley harbored. Approaching her impending release, investigators strategically interviewed her in prison, applying psychological pressure. They then monitored 97 telephone calls she made. The breakthrough arrived not through a grand confession, but through a tense, guarded conversation between Shelley and her father in 2017. The silence on the line, the shared knowledge of a dark secret, provided the circumstantial momentum the authorities desperately needed. On June 2nd, 2017, shortly after she had rebuilt a new life under the name Shelley Norgard Harmon, investigators arrived to place her under arrest for the murder of Pamela Pitts. The courtroom battle that followed was arduous, fraught with the challenges of a 30-year-old mystery. Recognizing the fragility of their case, prosecutors presented the Pitts family with a difficult choice: risk a trial with aging witnesses, or accept a plea deal that would guarantee a conviction but result in no additional prison time. Choosing the certainty of truth, the family agreed. On March 1st, 2021, Shelley stood before a judge and finally admitted to her crimes. She confessed to tracking Pamela down on that fateful night in 1988, engaging in a heated dispute that escalated into unimaginable violence. Shelley admitted to repeatedly striking Pamela until the young woman stopped breathing, though she steadfastly refused to detail the subsequent burning and desecration of the body. Because she received credit for the 20 years served for the murder of Ray, alongside the years spent awaiting trial, Shelley walked free from the courthouse at 50 years of age. To the casual observer, the scales of justice might appear forever unbalanced. A woman who systematically annihilated the people who tried to leave her is now walking free. Yet, as we reflect on this tragedy through a lens of human endurance, we must focus our attention not on the darkness of the perpetrator, but on the luminous resilience of the victims and their families. Paul Pitts and his family stood steadfast for over 3 decades. They carried the memory of Pamela, ensuring that her life was not defined merely by its brutal end, but by the joy and light she brought into the world. The family of Ray Clerks continues to honor his ambitious spirit. They demonstrate a quiet, powerful dignity that echoes the very best of human solidarity. In the end, while the legal conclusion may feel incomplete, the moral victory belongs to those who continue to love, remember, and support one another. It is a stark reminder that we must cultivate balance, cherish our communities, and hold tightly to the joy of living, for it is our connections to each other that ultimately protect us from the darkest shadows of the human heart. The tragedy that unfolded in the serene landscapes of Prescott, Arizona, is a stark reminder of the fragile balance between human connection and the perilous depths of the fractured psyche. As a journalist observing this profound sorrow through a lens that deeply values the sanctity of life, community solidarity, and the harmonious relationship between humanity and nature, one cannot help but mourn the profound violation of these ideals. The Prescott National Forest, a verdant sanctuary where residents typically seek solace, fraternity, and the simple joys of existence, was transformed into a theater of unimaginable heartbreak. The story begins in the autumn of 1988, a time when the leaves turn and the promise of a crisp, renewing season hangs in the air. Pamela Pitts, a vibrant 19-year-old woman, embodied a radiant zest for life. She was a beacon of light to her family, a mentor to her younger siblings, and a friend whose innate warmth could disarm the most guarded of souls. Pamela possessed a deep-rooted sense of belonging and familial love, the very foundation of a balanced and fulfilled life. Yet, on the night of September 16, 1988, this bright light was abruptly extinguished. When Pamela vanished, the silence she left behind was deafening. 13 agonizing days later, on September 29th, a local resident seeking the tranquil embrace of the evening stumbled upon a macabre desecration near a communal fire pit. The discovery of Pamela, her physical form subjected to a brutal and profound indignity, shattered the innocence of the small town. The sheer brutality of the act, an attempt to erase her very identity through fire, spoke not merely of violence, but of a deep, consuming hatred. It was an affront not only to the victim, but to the natural world around her, turning a place of gathering into a monument of grief. To understand the darkness that consumed Pamela, one must peer into the troubled soul of the perpetrator, her roommate, Shelley Norgard. Shelley was a young woman adrift, heavily burdened by the ghost of abandonment and a fractured upbringing. Unlike Pamela, who was anchored by the unwavering love of her family, Shelley navigated the world with a perilous emptiness. Psychological analysis suggests that for individuals suffering from such profound attachment wounds, the prospect of losing a stabilizing figure can trigger a catastrophic unraveling. When Pamela, seeking her own independence and growth, made the natural decision to move out and return to the warmth of her family home, she inadvertently threatened the fragile reality Shelley had constructed. The tragedy of Shelley is the tragedy of a spirit so starved of genuine affection that it morphed into possessive rage. In her mind, Pamela was not just leaving a shared apartment. She was taking away Shelley's tether to stability. The fatal confrontation was born of a desperate, violent compulsion to control what she could not bear to lose. The investigation into Pamela's death languished in the shadows of uncertainty for years. The community, grappling with the trauma, spun tales of cults and dark rituals, a collective psychological defense mechanism to make sense of a senseless act. Yet, the truth was far more intimate and human. The wheels of justice, though agonizingly slow, never halted. Sustained by the relentless dedication of local investigators and the enduring resilience of Pamela's family. Their dignified patience in the face of profound sorrow is a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. Tragically, the depths of Shelley Norgard's psychological abyss would claim another innocent life before the truth was brought to light. In May of 1991, the community was struck by a second wave of grief when Ray Clerks, a responsible and ambitious 24-year-old man with dreams of taking to the skies as a pilot, disappeared. His remains were discovered weeks later in a vertical mine shaft, a victim of a fatal gunshot. Once again, the motive was rooted in the terror of abandonment. Ray, seeking to forge his own path and end his relationship with Shelley, became the target of her ultimate, fatal possessiveness. Shelley's confession to Ray's murder revealed a chilling detachment. She had ended his life while they were stargazing, a moment that should inspire awe and humility before the universe, perverted into a final act of control. Shelley served 20 years for the murder of Ray Clerks, a period of incarceration that offered some measure of physical safety to the public, yet left the agonizing question of Pamela's fate unresolved. It was not until 2017, after painstaking reviews of 97 recorded prison conversations, that detectives found a fragile thread needed to unravel the decades-old mystery. A seemingly veiled admission of guilt provided the leverage needed to finally charge her with the murder of Pamela Pitts. In the spring of 2021, nearly 33 years after Pamela's vibrant life was stolen, Shelley stood before a court of law and offered a fraction of the truth. She admitted to